coming on. But great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And Shiv, we all know that you're on the top 300. You've broken into that very high ranking 287 as of now, I think, when they froze it last. And well done. You made a big charge at that Olympic team. But I guess it'll have to wait till next year. And of course, you will be on that Olympic team the next time I think we get around. And great time to be in Delhi because you can be with your family and no golf, and that's a very relaxed, imposed holiday on you.
Correct.
So Shivi, I will just wait for 2 minutes for everybody to join up. I think we're just populating the screen. I can see the numbers slowly rising. That's good, but because everybody's coming on. But great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And Shiv, we all know that you're on the top 300. You've broken into that very high ranking 287 as of now, I think, when they froze it last. And well done. You made a big charge at that Olympic team. But I guess it'll have to wait till next year. And of course, you will be on that Olympic team the next time I think we get around. And
I mean, obviously, for any youngster, I'm sure there's lots of youngsters that are tuning in. For all of us, it's a goal. You want to. I'm not a youngster anymore, but I know as a kid growing up, back then golf was never in the Olympics, so the dream was always the Asian Games. I was lucky enough to be able to realize that dream of playing in the Asian Games and going on to win, the gold medal. And winning that really gave me that sort of belief and confidence for pro golf. Up till that point, believe it or not, I wasn't convinced that I was going to play pro golf. I thought I'd go to college in America, see how that pans out, and kind of make a decision after that. But that feeling of winning for your country, standing up on that podium, receiving the medal, I remember saying that time to the IOC head, I was Ranveer Singh, and I said, if golf is ever in the Olympics, this is the feeling that you want. And today we're lucky enough that golf is in the Olympics. It's been a big goal of mine. Obviously getting postponed to next year has its pluses and minuses, but at the same time, I think it's the fairest thing to do. Gives everyone a fair shot at qualifying, and when the qualification period ends, you will have the best two players represented.
Super. I think it works both ways, and in this case, at least on a personal note, it will give you that shot at it, because I know you're just itching to get back on that podium and represent the country at the highest level. And you've always done that to the best of your ability. Since you were a junior golfer, you've been making the Indian flag fly high. And tell us a little bit about yourself, of how you started and where you started. I know you used to live very close to a driving range, and you also are a member of the Delhi Golf Club. So I think both of those things kind of had some effect in your life. So tell us how it all started, Shiv.
Well, I started golf by today's standards relatively late. I started when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And I started with a cut-up 2-iron that my dad cut from his set. And it was one of those things that, my dad used to play golf. And I wanted to be, every kid wants to be like his dad. So I used to follow him around. And I want to go with you. My dad was a pretty terrible golfer. And I still maintain he's pretty bad till date. But, I just wanted to follow I still wanted to follow him around. And, started on the chipping green at Delhi Golf Club. All of 60 yards, but I used to hit full 2-irons. There, I could stand there all day, start first thing in the morning. He'd play 18 holes, and I was still on the chipping green, hitting as many balls as I could, and I didn't want to go home. And that's where the love for the game really began. To be honest, I didn't really set out, or even later in life, thinking that I wanted to play professional golf. Golf was something I did, but my family and everyone always wanted me to go and pursue an education. And golf kind of happened on the side. I remember I was 13 years old, the first time I got picked to play for India. And that was the greatest feeling in the world. You get your blazer, it says India on it, got all these badges. And I felt really cool, walking just out and you walk around. So that...
we lost you somewhere around blazer. Blazer with all the badges. Yeah, we lost you somewhere around there with the blazer and the badges. And then after that?
Yeah, so basically, you walk around the airport and, you've got these India colors on and you feel really good about yourself. You're representing the country. And to be fair, back then, there was probably only a handful of kids my age that were playing. So it was kind of easy to, sort of succeed and stand out. But I think that's where the real love for the game came, was, when I got to first represent my country, it was really a really cool feeling. And then I said, you know what? Actually, as any kid growing up, cricket was my first love, and golf was just a sport that I played. And back then, you had to answer all these questions that why do you play golf? Golf's an old man's game, and
Yeah.
I know you play golf, but what do you do for a living? Those kind of things. But it's changed so much since then. From when I started to now, it's crazy how you see 3 and 4-year-old kids, the junior programs, the junior tournaments that they get to play. We were lucky if you played a handful of tournaments back then. You had one tournament, then you had 2 months off, and you had another tournament, and a handful of tournaments was a lot. And now I see the kids have got so much access. So for me, it really started off as a hobby, but turned into something I loved so much that it turned into my career. And today I'm still 15, 16 years into professional golf, loving it every bit.
And I've seen of late that after a little lull in your career, suddenly there's this revitalized Shiv again, and a much more calmer Shiv, a much more relaxed Shiv. So what's the secret, Shiv? There's something going on in your life?
Fatherhood.
There you go. I think the lucky charm was that little girl.
Yeah, but it also makes you calmer. You realize golf is easy when you're out there. Chasing a 2-year-old around the house, as you know, can be a very, very tough thing. So golf comes pretty easy, and you need a lot of patience to handle a 2-year-old. So once you can do that, a golf course is easy.
I know people are waiting to ask you questions, and they've already posted some up there. So I'll just run through in between about questions, and we can just continue our chat in the meantime. So LMJGT, that's of course Little Master Mr. Faisal Qureshi. In this lockdown, he's asking, it's easy to stay fit, but what do you do to keep your swing and mind sharp? Because you might have to jump into a tournament as soon as the lockdown is over.
Right, Kakar Saab, to answer your question, Kakar Saab, I call him because he's a Prahlad Kakar lookalike for most people that... you're right. Home fitness is something I think everyone's embraced. It's become a rage. It's made people realize that you don't really have to go to the gym to stay fit. You can do a lot of things at home. I'm following a program as well. My trainer sends me something. Every day I've got a 45-minute to hour-long thing. As far as golf goes, you can try and replicate some things at home. You try and do some drill swings. What I'm doing at the moment is, and I think it's good advice for most kids as well, is work on the basics and the fundamentals. I think what happens when we get out on a driving range, we're too focused on the result of the shot. Whereas here, when you're actually stuck inside the house, it's a good time to stand in front of the mirror, work on your posture, work on your grip, just work on the basics, and just looking at having, everything in order. You can even work on your alignment at home. I'm doing that. I set up a little thing on my terrace when I'm hitting balls. So when you actually get out of results, you're working on fundamentals and basics. And when you actually come out of this break, however long it may be, you get back on the driving range, you'll be in a better position.
So you're absolutely right, because the moment they start hitting balls, they're looking at the ball flight and stuff like that. But here at this time, like you said, they can actually work on the processes which go behind putting that ball flight in order. So fantastic, yes. Good advice there for all the kids in there. And I think most of them will catch up straight away. Okay, so next one coming in from Jalandhar. For which tournament were you selected at the age of 13?
I went to play in Malaysia. It was with the Malaysian Juniors, I think is what it was called at the time. It had a commercial, I think Commercial Union Malaysian Juniors. There was a whole bunch of us that went there together. I think there was about 12 or 14 strong contingent. And when you get out there, you realize how much fun the camaraderie is and what team golf is all about. Once you turn professional, it's all about your personal accomplishments and everyone's kind of doing their own thing. But when you go as a team, it was a great bonding experience. And to me, it was like, wow, this is what golf is really about. The bug caught me then. When I came back, I remember working much harder on every aspect of my game, because I was like, I really want to make this team every single time.
Right, and I saw a picture of that somewhere close. I think in Facebook, or someone posted that picture of you with all the badges. I think it was that same tournament. I don't know, was it Shiraz or was it Shahil or someone, or Ashok Kumar. Someone put it out. Fantastic. So next question which comes up is Tavish Mani. Tavish is a small little one. You'll never miss these two brothers. They're always in Delhi Golf Club. Tavish and Samarveer. Yeah, that's right.
Always stealing my golf balls on the chipping green. Boys, I'm watching you.
So Tavish asked you a question. When was your first Asian Tour win?
My first Asian Tour win, Tavish, came in 2005 at the Volvo Masters. It was my rookie season on the Asian Tour. I remember going into the final round, I was tied for the lead. I really had no expectations. I was happy to just be qualified for the Tour Championship. And Jyoti actually finished second. Jyoti Randhawa finished second to me. And I had a one-shot lead playing the last hole, hit my second shot over the back of the green, and hold it from off the green to win. My winning score, I still remember, was 20 under par around Thai Country Club. And honestly, the first win is always the most special, as they say. And that opened up many, many doors for me. Went on to play in the World Golf Championships and the Open Championship the next year. And there was no turning back. Literally, I can divide my career, the 11 months before that and then, since. So the first win is always very special. 15 years ago now, but still very fresh in the memory.
Right, and you mentioned the British Open. I know that you played that one, and I think in 2013. And the other one which we want to talk to you about is the US Open, where you also did very well, I think. You fared pretty good. And how was that experience with the big boys and, both those events, US Open and the British Open? I think you played both of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're very different in different ways. The Open Championship or the British Open, as we know it, was something you grew up as a kid in India. Really, it was a dream to play in the Open Championship because I think the time that it came on television, it was prime time on TV in India, from watching Seve Ballesteros and Norman and Faldo and, all those things in the 90s and early 2000s. It was like, that's the one tournament I really want to play. And I was lucky enough, my first major was in 2006. I played the Open Championship at Hoylake and then subsequently played it a couple of times after. But, you as a kid, you had this dream that you want to see your name up on that iconic yellow leaderboard. And I remember 2013 in the first round. In fact,
oh, yeah, I remember that.
I was one of the last groups to go out that day around 4 p.m. And all morning I was watching golf on TV. And all the commentators kept saying the conditions are brutal. The golf course has become really hard. The greens are rolling 13 on the stem. The wind is blowing. And I thought, oh my God, here I have to go out and tee off this afternoon and things are getting worse. Zach Johnson, I think, was the only guy at about 4 under par. And I was like, how can you even make birdies in these kind of conditions? And remember teeing off 6 under par through 7 holes, looking up on the leaderboard, seeing my name up there and thinking, is this a dream or is this actually happening? And, the crowd at the Open Championship are just amazing. And the respect you get. I remember walking off that 18th green, getting a standing ovation because they really appreciated what it was. And, qualifier coming through and sort of a new name or or unknown identity. It was a really, really cool feeling. On the other hand, the US Open is very different. It's almost like you're comparing the Wimbledon to the US Open. My first one was at Pinehurst in 2014, and that was an unbelievable experience. I played quite well. I finished 22nd or 23rd, somewhere around there. And at one point, I was on the leaderboard and then made triple bogey on the 16th hole. And that's just how small the margins are in golf. The difference between finishing top 10 or contending and just falling out can be one hole. And that's why major championships are so brutal, because the way the golf courses are set up, one mistake can really derail you. But if I was to compare the two, I'd say the British Open has a lot of tradition. They've managed to keep that alive. The US Open is just a brutal, hard test of golf. And every single hole just comes at you and there's no let up.
And the triple bogey was on the par 5, is it?
No, it was on a par 4, but it was 520-yard par 4, so par 5 in most cases.
Yeah. It's a long hole. I remember it's a very, very long hole. Yeah, that Pinehurst golf course. Fantastic. I caddied there last year for a student of mine who went on to win the World Championship, but he did pretty good. Raghav Chugh, you know Raghav?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, him. Okay, so another question which comes up. Hi, Shiv. How do you feel about the junior golf scene in India?
I think it's really good right now. Like I was saying earlier, when I played, I probably played a handful of events in a year, 6 or 7, got to represent India a couple of times. Now there's so many little junior tours around, Little Master Tour, the tour that you do, Romit, what IGU organizes, and several other tours. So there's so many opportunities for the young kids to go out there and play. And I think that's the most important thing.
That's right.
The one thing that I felt the reason I went to America, to college in America, was to get that competition and competition on a regular basis. The only way, you can do whatever you want in practice, but the way to test yourself is to test yourself in competition. Even in cricket, you can be great in the nets, but you have to go out there and perform on the field. Golf, it's the same thing. Practice rounds are different, tournaments are different. So the more tournaments you can have, the more tournament ready you can be, the better player you're going to become. And I think that's the one biggest thing that I've seen in India. There's a lot more coaching now. When we were around, there was maybe one or two coaches. Now I think the coaching has evolved a lot. There's so much more technology that the kids have access to, and also competition play, which I think is the most important thing.
In fact, talking about competition, there's someone who wants to ask something related. What impact did college golf at Purdue have on your eventual development?
I think a lot. To be honest, when I first went to Purdue, the first 6 months I kind of hated it. I said, coming from India, we're so used to everything, done for us over here. You stay with your parents. You don't worry about the little things like cooking, laundry. You have a caddy when you go to the golf course. So we're pretty much spoiled kids growing up. And you go there and you get a real wake-up call and you realize that you have to do everything yourself. You have to manage yourself. And I think that really prepared me for pro golf. Obviously, the competition golf-wise was fantastic. And I had to, compete at the highest level. But I think it also teaches you how to prepare yourself for the tour life, which is how do you manage yourself? How do you manage everything? Your meals, your exercise. There's no one who's looking out for you. You have to look out for yourself. So I think pro golf, the 4 years that you spend playing college golf really prepares you if you want to be a professional golfer later in more ways than one, not just from the golf side, but also from the lifestyle point of view.
Fantastic answer. I think that's something that you touched upon, which is, truly beneficial to everybody, because everybody thinks, why should college golf be important? Or some people say maybe it's not the right way to do it. But what you touched upon is the kind of effect it has on your lifestyle, how you look at life and how you handle yourself through that, cooking, polishing your own shoes, cleaning your own clothes, things that we're not used to. Living in India, like you said, we're spoiled for choice. Everything is done for us. Ramu, chai lao, and so get this done. There's a caddy out there to pick your bag up, and kids really need to learn.
I think it's a discipline. When you're as a team unit, if workouts was 6 a.m., which means you had to arrive there at 5:55 in the morning. Come rain, come hail, come snow. I went to a college where it was very, very cold in the winter, but at 5:55 we used to be out with our torches running on the golf course. You do it because of the team environment. To be self-motivated sometimes can be a bit harder. If somebody told me, in the middle of winter, Delhi at 5:45 in the morning, go to the torch and run, I might do it 3 or 4 times a week, but I won't do it every day. But when you're doing it in a team environment, I think it pushes you to be disciplined. And whether it's your workouts, whether it's your practice, whether it's your study, you kind of hold yourself accountable.
And also, I'll ask you this because I know that you will answer it differently than everybody else who's answered it. In college golf, they say that all coaches are managers. But you had a coach which actually stood out there, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it did, but don't expect to be coached once you go to college. I think it's a very fair assessment to say they're more managers than coaches. They're more wagon drivers and recruiters. But at the same time, they obviously have a vast knowledge of the sport. I think they've been around a long time. My coach, went from North Carolina to Purdue. He had 30 odd years of experience, having coached the likes of Davis Love and some great players. So a lot of them have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and I think you can benefit from that. And the system of college golf and the system of golf in America is very different to India. We are in a very different environment. Over here, everything is we're kind of mollycoddled, like I said. But the coaches over there are ruthless. If you're not in the top 5, you don't make the team. There's no 2 ways about it. I remember when I first went, I said, I'm the number 1 junior in India. I'm going to play in the Eisenhower Trophy, the Nomura Cup, Asian Games gold medal. It doesn't mean anything. You still have to go show up for your qualifiers. And if you're in the top 5 of that week, you go and travel. Otherwise, you don't. So it really keeps you on your toes. And I think the coaches keep it very objective because they want the best team to play.
Right. And what do you suggest to those guys who, obviously for different reasons, can't make it to college golf? Not everybody can afford college golf, and not everybody can get a scholarship because they might not be top of the pops in India. But what do you say to the guys who want to grind it out here and, study here and then take life into pro golf?
Look, it's very different. Maybe if I was 18 or 19 years old today, growing up in India, I may not have gone to college in America. Like I said, I was lucky to play a handful of tournaments then. I went and traveled and played as much as I could. My main reason for going was testing myself against the best competition in the world. And I was lucky enough, I played in an era where there was a lot of top golfers, from whether it be Paul Casey, Luke Donald, Graham McDowell, the list goes on and on. So I played with those kind of guys. So that was my main reason. But today, like I said, you have a structured junior program, you have a structured amateur program. You get to travel to a lot more tournaments. I think they even go to the British Amateur, the US Amateur. So yeah, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule. I don't think America is necessarily better than India. I just think that at that time, at that point in time, there was very little competition here and very little exposure. I think that's changed. Whoever's here, at the end of the day, you have all the access to the technology in India now. Whereas back then, it used to be tough to even get golf balls in India. If I wanted a set of clubs, I had to wait 3 months to import it into India. You had to go through the IGU and you had to, apply for import license, and a dozen golf balls used to come in the mail to you 6 months later. So things have changed a lot. For me, the most exciting thing of college golf initially was I went there and I had a bag full of goodies. I had 12 dozen Titleist balls and brand new set of clubs. In India, you didn't have any of that. But now things have changed. So I think you can benefit from college golf in America, but you can definitely also succeed playing golf in India.
Super, super. That's a great answer because there were lots of questions coming up on that. In fact, Zahan was also asking, hey, Shiv, do you consider college golf as a good stepping stone to turning pro? And I think you kind of touched upon that straight away, in your previous answer. The next question which comes up is, hey, Shiv, firstly, we're all very proud of you, super proud of you, representing our country. Secondly, my question is, how important is a pre-swing routine? This is a little girl's father. The girl's about 10 years old. And this is the father asking that question with her watching.
So I think if you talk to most pro golfers, they will say that a pre-shot routine is extremely important for the simple reason that it helps you be consistent. Under pressure, if you forget your routine, it can kind of throw you off sometimes. So I think why the emphasis on the routine is there is that it doesn't matter what the situation is, whether it's your tee shot on the first hole or the 72nd hole, or it's a putt to get into a playoff or a putt to win the tournament. If you follow the same routine every time, you take the pressure of the situation out. So what you do in practice is equally important as to what you do in tournament play. So if you make a habit of having a good pre-shot routine in practice and carry that onto the golf course, whether it's a putt to make the cut sometimes or a putt to win, it shouldn't matter as long as you have a consistent routine.
Wow, that's another great piece of advice. Thank you, Shiv. These guys are really feeding off that. That's why they're here. They're looking into this conversation, and because they want to learn a lot more, and especially learning from someone who knows, who's done it, who's reached the highest level, and he's taken care of a lot of things which these guys are still planning in the planning stage. So the next thing, there's another youngster who practices really hard. How many days should one practice on the course and range in a week if I'm planning to turn professional?
Well, I mean, at your age, I used to do it every single day. I didn't want to break. So I understand there's schoolwork and there's, you've got to study and you've got to do all of those things. I was lucky enough to grow up close to a driving range. So, I could finish my homework and go in the evening and hit 100 balls. But if I were you and your goal is to turn professional, there's no substitute for hard work, and there's no reason why you can't find an hour or two every day, whether it be before school or after school. Make it part of your routine. I remember my mom made the effort. She used to drive me to practice before school and then drop me off to school. So it just meant waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I know some parents are probably not going to like me to make them wake up at 5 o'clock, but if your goal is to become the best in the world, there's no substitute for hard work.
Right, fantastic. Avani Prashant, another girl from the south, from Bangalore. She's finished in the top 3 the last few years of the World Championship. She said, I'm a 13-year-old girl, and my question is, what areas of the game do I work extra to be able to compete on the US golf courses if we cannot go and stay in the US to practice while we are there? So if you're staying here in India, what's she work on?
Yeah, look, Avni, the best advice I'll give you is the advice I got when I was a youngster. is 70% of your time should be spent practicing your short game. I think the short game is something that holds you in good stead. We all have days where we hit the ball well or we don't. But if you have a good, solid short game, you can compete on any golf course in the world. So I would say work on your bunker play, your chipping, your pitching, your putting. Obviously, the greens in the US are usually a little bit faster. So practice a few more downhill putts. That's the only thing. But I would say focus your practice on having a good, solid short game. Because if you have a good short game, you can play on any golf course in the world.
Super, fantastic, Shiv. And I think that's important for anything, wherever you play, the short game is crucial because there'll be days when you're hitting it good and there'll be days when you're not hitting it as good. And that short
Absolutely.
game will always bail you out. You're right. Okay,
So
the next one comes up.
Short game is your defense, right? And if you've got to have a strong defense, whatever sport you play, so just make sure. I mean, Tiger is a great example of that. We all watch him on TV. Phil Mickelson, they hit the ball everywhere. They're hitting into the crowd all the time. What separates them from the others is they manage to get it up and down more often than not. So that's one best advice.
Another great example of that is the guy who's asking the next question of hitting it all over the place and still putting a score up. He says, "Oh my God, the Shiv Kapur, what an icon! Can I get an autograph from Rohan Malhotra?"
Yeah, Rohan, this is for kids, not for you. Move over.
Okay, he's a junior golfer's father coming in. His son is 16 years old. How a junior golfer around 16 how does he understand that he's progressing satisfactorily towards his goal of playing pro golf? What are the stages that one needs to keep an eye on or keep watching?
Look, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule or there's no secret formula. I think as long as he's improving, if he's shooting under par scores on a regular basis, he's ready to turn professional. I think there's a big stigma around, professional golf is so different to amateur golf or junior golf. It really isn't. The only difference it is that you play a lot more tournaments than you're used to playing in amateur or junior golf. I think you need to be prepared to play 30 weeks. So that's where the fitness angle comes about. If you can shoot the scores as an amateur, there's no reason you can't shoot those scores as a professional. But I think a good gauge is if you're shooting under par regularly, I think I'd sum it up in a different way. I think pro golf is about your bad rounds being better and not necessarily your good rounds being great. I think everyone, when they play well, they have the ability to shoot good scores. It's taking that 76 or 77 out of the equation and your bad rounds being level par or 1 over or 2 over par, then you have the ability to bounce back. So I think the next level of progression is seeing how good his bad rounds can be.
Right. So the best of the worst, huh? So in the worst. So just tighten up those screws. Don't let it just get out of hand. Fantastic.
And
So future of
if your scores are getting better, and some people are late bloomers, some people peak early, 16, 17, a lot of people want to turn pro early. Some people find their peak in their mid-20s. So it's very, very personal. But as long as you're improving year on year and your bad scores are getting better, then you know you're on the right track.
Right. Fantastic. Well answered. There's some guy called Joey Mabasa saying hi. If you've next question.
Yeah, we'll ignore that one.
Chetan Golf. If you've held India's pride for the longest and seen top-class international tournament, what do you think current pro golfers are missing? And what do you think currently pro golfers are missing to make it to the European and PGA Tour from India?
I don't necessarily think we're missing anything. I just think it's a matter of time. I think in the next 5 or 7 years, you're going to see a handful of them over there. I think specifically from the PGA Tour perspective, they've made it very difficult for internationals to get on. You have to pretty much dedicate yourself to living in the US, playing a year on the web.com, then getting to the web.com finals, and that's your path to the PGA Tour. Whereas back in the day, if you went to Q school, got your card, you got through. There's no Q school anymore. So the PGA Tour is a lot harder now with no Q school being there. So unless you can base yourself in America and dedicate 2 or 3 years of your life to trying to get on the PGA Tour, that's probably the only route. The only other way is top 50 in the world, which becomes much harder. Again, it's like a catch-22. If you're not playing on the biggest tour in the world, it's very hard to get into the top 50 in the world. So if somebody who really wants to get on the PGA Tour needs to dedicate 2 or 3 years of their life to living in America. European Tour, on the other hand, I think is we've always struggled with the weather. You're always playing in cold, windy weather. It's not something we've grown up in. I played 12 seasons on the European Tour, and it did get easier towards, after 5 or 6 years, but still, it's something that it's alien to us. So again, someone whose dream is to play on the European Tour needs to practice in cold, windy conditions to be able to survive and play on the European Tour. It's very different. We grow up. The reason we do better in Asia is because we're used to grain, we're used to heat, we're used to humidity. So I think it's, again, if I draw parallels with cricket, we do better on slower tracks. We don't do so well on seaming tracks. It's just something in our DNA that we've grown up with. You grow up on a golf course like Delhi Golf Club, you're not going to be bombing it a long way. You're going to be somebody who hits a lot of fairways, and I think the game also is changing and progressing. So I think it's a few factors that go in there, but weather also plays a big part in it.
Right. So some more questions. Very good answers, Shiv. I think that's crisp and clear, and you're actually going to the point, and you're giving them more than they're actually looking for. So next question which comes up is, hey Shiv, can we ever see golf being more accessible in India?
I've been saying this, I've gone blue in the face saying this for years and years. Every time I'm interviewed about what we can do, I think we need more public driving ranges and more public golf courses. And until you have that, you're not going to see a big boom in India. We've seen Lado Sarai has been a great example of a public golf course, and you see the number of people that have taken up the sport, access to the golf. For me personally, the DDA driving range at Shreveport, that's where I grew up. I mean, if I didn't have that, who knows? So I think public golf course and public driving ranges are the need of the hour. We've been saying it for years. It's an Olympic sport now. Hopefully the government will stop giving it a tag of an elitist sport and start looking at golf as something that, is one of our Olympic sports and needs as much attention as the other sports. So I know golf requires a lot of land and a lot of space, but I think the tier 2 cities is where the real big boom will come. But if we don't have the land for public golf courses, at least public driving ranges is a good start.
I think that's a great point also. We've had a lot of discussions through this week about these things, and I'm happy to inform you that, West Bengal government actually went ahead and opened a public driving range along with a 9-hole small golf course, and which has 2 par 4s and like 7 par 3s, and a full-fledged driving range with 12 bays plus about 10 more grass bays. So, and it's like a 300-yard driving range, so wide enough. So they've done a good job in Calcutta and a place called Newtown. And I don't know if you know Neil Law from Calcutta, used to be a golfer earlier. He's running the place and he's doing good. And now Brandon has just taken over another public range, which is opened by, again, a local person in next to DLF Golf and Country Club, which is called Skyline. So, there are lots of good things happening, and Aurangabad has come up with a new course, 9-hole golf course. So a lot of these guys are slowly coming up in the tier 2 places, and which is what you just said. And I think the guy who asked this question, you will definitely see more accessibility as we go along.
And that's the answer. China has turned it around in 10 years with accessibility. The reason Americans and in the UK and everywhere it's so successful is because for £5 or $5 you can go and play a local muni course, and that's what we really need in India.
Right. Well, there's a lot of demand for Veda on the show, but I'll go to another 8-year-old guy who's asking this question. You know him too. He plays at the Delhi Golf Club also. Another student of mine, Chaitanya Pandey. He's the current European champion, so he's done well for himself. He says, I'm an 8-year-old, sir, and would like to know what kind of sports you played when you were my age.
All sports other than golf. But honestly, I played a lot of cricket. Cricket was my first love, and it still is. Golf is what I do for a living. Soccer, I think it also helps. Football helps develop your skills and your agility. Played a little bit of tennis as well. So I would say play all sports. I think it's very important. And today, I see the way they're coaching young kids. They encourage them to play other sports. Builds hand-eye coordination. Builds the whole thing of playing in a team environment. Makes you more athletic in general. I think if you look at today's modern golfers, none of them grew up only playing golf. I think they all played other sports. In fact, Tony Ells was a tennis player, rugby player, and golf. He had to choose between the three, and he was equally good. Luckily for us, he chose golf, but apparently he was good enough. A.B. de Villiers, also, in cricket, he had the opportunity to play 2 or 3 different sports. So I think the more sports you play, the better it's going to develop your skills as a golfer.
Even the old timers, I think Raymond Floyd used to be like a baseball player, wasn't he? And also
Yeah.
played golf then. Yeah, he was like top notch baseball player.
Gary
Okay,
Woodland,
now
who won the US Open last year, played college basketball and then played golf much later in life.
right. Okay, another quick question on college golf. How often do you get to play tournaments in a year if you're doing college golf? Is it difficult to manage academics alongside golf?
To be honest, it can be difficult to manage academics, but again, it's about being self-disciplined and what you want to do. I would say on an average, we would play about 20 tournaments a year, given we had an off season in the winter. And basically, we played most weekends. So you attended your classes from Monday to Friday. Friday evening, we used to get on a plane and we used to fly, play a tournament, play 36 holes on Saturday, 18 holes on Sunday, fly back Sunday night. And usually when we came back off the flight, it was straight into the library because you typically had a test on Monday morning. So you had to make that effort. It's tough. You just played 54 holes of golf on the weekend in a competition, but Monday morning at 7:30 you're on an exam. So you have to make those sacrifices. And I think it's very important. At least the college that I went to really pushed me for my academics and to work hard because they felt that academics is a very, very important part of it. Because injuries can happen, many things can happen, so you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So I kind of tried to balance the two between golf and academics. It can be a tough balance sometimes. It requires sacrifices, but then again, if you're trying to be great at what you're doing, you've got to make the sacrifices.
Good, great. That was a question from a junior golfer, as well as Faisal also had part of that question. Second part of his question, the second question that Faisal has, and it's the last one, he says, when a junior plays a golf tournament, what should the junior look for in the event, the competition, the course, the field, or just play it just for gaining experience? Anything else that you might want to add?
I think golf is one of those games where you're actually not playing against the competition, you're playing against yourself. In other sports, it depends. In tennis, who's on the other side of the net, the level of competition matters, or in cricket, who's bowling to you or who's batting. But in golf, you're playing against the golf course. So it's about measuring yourself, and you're only competing with yourself in the conditions. So it's about competing against the golf course. But also, like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing like competitive practice. You can go out and play with your buddies or your dad or play alone and come back and say, I played well. But competition tests you under pressure. And I think that was the most important thing that I got out of it. Any tournament, big or small, didn't matter. You need to feel the pressure and you need to feel the nerves. And you got to set personal goals for yourself. So I think the competition side of it, very, very important. And also, when I mean the competition, I mean feeling the pressure of competition. But at the same time, you're competing against yourself and not against anyone else in the field.
Right. You would know the answer to the next question is obviously you've seen it with your dad and you playing tournament golf. And the next concerned father is asking this question: How do parents plan financially for their children on the way to pursuing golf as a career?
Look, I understand it can be hard and golf can be an expensive game. Equipment's expensive, the travel's expensive, and it is tough. My father was very clear to me. He said, if you want to go play college golf in America, you better get a scholarship. And I worked towards that. I did 6 months of college in India. When I got my scholarship, I went. And it can be hard. I think it's tough to kind of plan. The best way to plan would be to set forward sort of a budget that, one tournament costs X amount, and he's going to play, say, 15 tournaments a year. So you multiply that by 15, and that's how you have to plan for it. But there are ways and means, and as they get better, I remember I was employed by an oil company. All the oil companies would take on the top amateurs at the time. So I think if you perform well, there are rewards to be had, there are scholarships to be had. But at the initial level, I think we all have to be grateful to our parents. They obviously put us into this and they invested their time and money into it. And it's not cheap, but no sport is really, for that matter. I think the only advice I can give you is, if you invest in him today, he will reap the benefits down the road. But again, it's not about, I think my dad was very disciplined with me. It wasn't about, oh, you want a new club, you can have it. You had to earn it. So if it was like, If I want a new club, if you can shoot 3 under par today on 9 holes, you're going to get a new club. If you can go out and win this tournament, you're going to get that. So I think it also, kids need to realize that it doesn't come easy and you don't give it to them too easy. I think there's that fine balance, which is kind of hard, is that you want to support your kids, but at the same time, you don't want to spoil your kids and make them, they need to be hungry and they need to earn it. So maybe, of course, you need to plan for it, but at the same time, give them sort of a reward system where if you play well, you get to play more tournaments and you get more equipment, but don't give them everything too easy on a platter.
Right, perfect. Well said, Shiv. Well said. You're a taskmaster, it seems, huh? I think your daughter's growing up will change that.
I don't know about that. She bullies me.
That's what I'm saying. The bigger they get, they'll bully you more.
Yeah.
whether or not you're going to get bullied, so don't worry. And you like getting bullied about that. So you'll love it. So the next question comes in. What kind of diet do you think a teen golfer should follow? Or give us an insight about what you do, for your diet while on the golf course and playing golf. I think that's a better way to look at it.
Yeah, I think, again, like when I talk about awareness of the game, 10 years ago, no one used to pay attention to diet or even exercise for that matter. Maybe longer than maybe 15 years ago, Tiger Woods came into the game and gave golf this whole athlete persona. And now everyone's doing it. Everyone's in the gym. They're following it. A lot of the young kids on tour watched Game Changers on Netflix, and suddenly everybody became vegan. So, yeah, it became a fad. But I think the thing is, what I've learned over the years, and I've gone through it scientifically with blood tests, and it's taken me a long time. Not till very recently have I gone gluten-free, just because I did a blood test and that's what showed up. And I've been following kind of a diet, but that's come very late in my career. I think some of the kids starting out, if you can, inculcate a good diet early in your career, you've got a head start over everyone else. Specifically as to what to eat on the golf course, the rule of thumb, usually I always have a lot of nuts in my bag, great form of energy. It perks you up in the winter. It's good in the summer. It's good. Bananas, always good on the golf course, and protein bars. If not protein bars, granola bars. So those are kind of 3 things that I've always kept. We end up playing in a lot more hot weather, so you've got to have your electrolytes and all of that. So my bag is always packed with Pocari Sweat electrolytes, bananas, nuts, and because nuts is also a great form of magnesium and stuff that I need for my body. And now of late I've used a lot of dates, because dates is great. It fills you up and great energy, and it's the right kind of sugars. So eating right on the golf course is very important. I think very underestimated. A good gauge is if you come off the golf course feeling hungry, means you've not done it right. You should come off the golf course not feeling hungry at all. You need to eat every 3 holes, every 4 holes. Make sure you drink water. If it's your caddy that is there, make sure your caddy is giving you water every 20, 30 minutes to make sure you're hydrated, because they've done a lot of studies. If you're dehydrated, you lose distance. When your legs kind of go weak, you start making unnatural moves in your body. So to stay hydrated and to stay, have good nutrition on the golf course, will make sure you stay in the correct postures, you're not making lazy swings, and you're also not losing club head speed.
Super stuff, Shiv, coming from you. And that is like, just like the nutrition we had earlier this week, Ryan Fernando. So he was talking about the same things that you just said, blood tests and gluten and no gluten in the diets, because the body doesn't accept it. So they should do a test and find out what they are good at and what they're not, and then follow a regimental diet to improve that. So super stuff, Shiv.
But yeah, like I said, with these young kids have access to all this information today. When we were growing up, there was nothing, all the club.
Sabzi.
Yeah, that's it.
Chicken tikkas.
That was the treat.
That was a treat, yeah. So there's another question coming out, something that you are very friendly with. A friend of yours called Pressure, and all pro golfers are, and they need to make good friends with them. So what are your views on how to handle pressure? Do we have to handle it at all?
I think pressure is a mindset. There's pressure in everything. I mean, if you're playing pro golf or any competitive sport for that matter, if you don't feel the pressure or the butterflies in your stomach, then it's not fun. You need to feel the pressure, recognize it, and embrace it. And to me, I've always felt like the bigger the occasion, the more excited I get for it. So I think pressure is a mindset. And if you were to kind of put it in one word, what is pressure? Pressure is the fear of failure. Now, if you're scared to fail, you're going to feel more pressure. Now, if you embrace the pressure and say, look, this is my opportunity to go out and do well, and I'll give it my best, and if it comes off, great. If it doesn't, there's nothing I can do about it. I found that pressure made me concentrate harder. Just don't be afraid to fail. I mean, pressure is inbuilt. It's internal. It's not external. People say, oh, there's all this pressure from outside, from the crowd, from my parents, from people. It's not. Pressure is whatever you build inside you. You don't know what other people are thinking or what's built on you. So pressure is all internal. So as long as you can embrace it and feel that, you know what, this is my chance to succeed, and I'm not afraid to fail. That's basically it.
So super mindset, and that's exactly what you had to maintain that ahead of yours through all the tournaments that you actually went on to win. And I think we've seen a lot of that, and you come out pretty cool at the end of the day. But obviously
Not
you have
sometimes
you have some kind of strategy going on, and you've accepted pressure as something that you don't have to really deal with unless you're really wanting to deal with it. So next question is, do you think it's desirable, and at what stage do you take professional help in these areas?
I think it's the first step to anything is recognizing your own shortcomings, or recognizing, you know, what you're good at and what you're not. And it's not about what you tell anyone else. You need to be truthful to yourself. So if you are the kind of person that feels a lot of pressure, by all means, go out and get professional help. I would say myself, I work with Dr. Bob Rotella, one of the finest golf psychologists in the game. We worked together at 2 US Opens, in fact, Pinehurst, which I was alluding to earlier. And it's about putting yourself in the right mindset for the day. It's not things you don't already know, but sometimes a constant reminder is good. So, for example, you know, he tells me, I'll PG rate it a little bit because there's kids on the show, but we're walking from the putting green onto the first tee. And the message was really, remember how good you are. Just remember out there today how good you are, and be kind to yourself every time you hit a bad shot. Don't berate yourself. And the other very good one that I got was from Jeff Ogilvy. And, you know, when he used to be a very angry guy, throw a lot of clubs, lose his temper on the course easily. And the kind of self-talk that he had, he said self-talk is very important. If you keep telling yourself, I'm rubbish, you know, I don't know how to putt, I don't putt very well, my chipping's terrible, I'm driving the ball badly, you're constantly reminding yourself of that. And he said, what I did for myself was, I thought if somebody else was saying these things to me, how would I react? So if somebody came up to you and said, you know, Romit, you're a terrible driver of the golf ball. I mean, we keep saying this to ourselves, but if somebody else said it, you'd get pretty angry and pretty defensive in a second. So I think the mindset becomes, yeah, you know, my self-talk on the golf course has to be positive, because at the end of the day, I have to be my own best friend out there. But at the same time, coming back to your question, is it okay to, yeah, you must seek help, and there's no pride, or you're not too proud to seek help. I've done it. I would continue to do it. And like I said, even if you know all these things, it's always good for somebody to remind you of it. And it's at the end of the day, it's an ego boost. You need to feel good standing on the first tee. You need to feel like you're the best player in the field.
And that reassertion of that fact will just make you stronger in your beliefs, and, you know, you feel good about yourself every single time you hit that ball. Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, it's for you. You know, if you told your students before their first tee shot, you know what, your swing's not looking good today, just make sure you're thinking about dropping it to the inside of your grip, or there's no way they can play. God. But if the last thing you say to them before they go out to play is, you know what, your swing is so good on the range, I'm sure you're going to play great today. It's kind of, that's really what it is.
That's another great tip for all the teachers looking in. And Siva Murthy, you were asking that question, and Siva is from the south, Coimbatore, and he's a teacher, and he also wants to pick up some things. Priyant Randhawa also, I hope that answers your question about pressure and how you can handle it. Last two questions that we'll finish with, Shiv, because I know if I'm here for the next hour also, they'll keep on going at you. So we'll give you a break after this. But last couple of questions we'll take is, okay, let's choose some interesting ones. Okay, someone said that great answers, Shiv. Your answers are like if you're reading it out of a script. So the script is Shiv. And the pinnacle of health, Rohan Malhotra said, yeah, of course, I have a great diet too. I mean, he's just trying to compete, but okay, now let me just...
Get off the show.
Okay, now let me just find out. Yeah, okay, fine. I found two good questions. One of them is going to be pressure's done, your answer script. Okay, okay. Let's look at this one. This is going to be a nice one because this brings back a lot of memories for you. Can you tell us what you felt like when you won the Panasonic Open at your home course in front of all the people you love and admire and a golf course which you've always played on?
I think my emotions after winning kind of said it all. You know, as a kid growing up at Delhi Golf Club, I followed, Jyoti Randhawa, Arjun, Jeev, Gaurav Ghai, and I was always that little kid as a scorer walking behind them. I said, one day how cool would it be for me to be inside the ropes and be that guy playing? And not only playing, but to be able to win around Delhi Golf Club. I had maybe a 15-year career up to that point and didn't have a win at Delhi Golf Club. So that was something that was really, really special to me. Somebody asked me the other day, what was one of the most memorable shots of your career and why? And I said, the tee shot on the 18th hole at Delhi Golf Club with a 3-shot lead was probably one of my most memorable tee shots. And they said, why would you say that? You have a 3-shot lead and it's just a tee shot. So because of all the years and the carnage that I had seen and, the mistakes that you've seen people happen, sometimes experience isn't a good thing. And how much it meant to me that, at that point, up to the 17th hole, I thought I was really, really well concentrated. And once I hit that tee shot on 18, that was the first time I actually relaxed the whole time. And it kind of hit me that, okay, I allowed myself to think about winning the golf tournament and I'd gotten out of my process. So it meant a lot, not just, for my parents to see it, for my family and friends to see it. The caddies of Delhi Golf Club are an integral part of what I do, when I practice. So it meant a lot for me to, win in front of my kind of, when we were a kid, we used to have this sticker that says Delhi Golf Club, my second home. And it really is. I probably spent more time at Delhi Golf Club than in my own house. So to be able to win there, walk off that 18th green and that childhood dream becoming a reality was just surreal.
Super stuff, Shiv. Thank you so much for this session with all the kids. And in these troubled times, I would appeal to everybody to take care of everybody who works behind the scene. All those guys Shiv mentioned, in the club, the caddies, the staff, the changing room bearers. Just take care of these guys at your home clubs and be safe, everyone. And thank you so much, Shiv, again, for being on this chat. And these guys have learned a lot today from you. So it's great having you today. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Robert. Thanks, everyone. I enjoyed that.
Super, super. Thank you, sir.